So my name is Laura Wylie. I have a few different hats. So one of my hats is that I run a counselling service. We have different counselling services across the north of Ireland, not in the south yet, so we need to fix that. But we counsel children, young people, couples and adults. I have my colleague here from Links, and that's the name of the counselling service, who can tell you more about that. But my heart is to see and to create spaces that are safe for people to journey through their deepest and darkest wounds, to be trusted, to hold people in a safe space that they can journey into healing. And I think that counselling is a representation of the love of God in how we realise that every person is made in his image and therefore has inherent worth, and how we create spaces for people to share their deepest wounds. It's a sacred ground, and it's such a privilege. And so my other hat is then that I help train and equip people to become counsellors, with my colleagues over here too, who are tutors on our diploma in integrative counselling with a Christian perspective. So there's many people over the last number of years have travelled from all over Ireland to become trained and accredited counsellors through our course, and that is an absolute privilege. But I am also a mother and a wife, and my husband and I lead a church in Lisburn in Northern Ireland. And so we walk with people through a lot of different stories. We're very much aware that as every face differs, so does every story. And one of my biggest, beliefs is that people make sense when you know their story. Everyone makes sense when you know their story. And how we shape ourselves to be able to be safe, to be able to connect to others, has a lot to do with how our earlier childhood attachments have developed. And so that's my kind of theme this morning. We're going to look at rooted in connection, but really it's to give you a taste of what we would call in the counselling world attachment theory. Has anybody ever heard of attachment theory before? A few. Great, good. So you could be my experts. But if you've any questions as we go throughout this morning, please do put your hand up, because I would love to hear some of your voices. So I just thought we'd start with this quote: behind every behaviour is a story. Behind every reaction is a need. And often behind every difficult behaviour is a child asking, am I safe with you? Children, we often see the behaviour. It's the first thing we see. And we can, as people who help children, we could be focused on trying to manage behaviour. But what behaviour is an invitation to go inwards to understand what meaning is this child making of this situation. You know, how safe do they feel? And in my next seminar, if you're coming to that, we're going to be looking at some of the sort of symptoms of trauma and how to be good regulating presence with children to help them regulate their nervous system, to help them become more in tune with their needs. But attachment really does inform, it informs how different behaviours come to the surface and how we, as aware helpers, can help children understand what's going on and how we model safe relationships. So why does connection matter? Well, we are built for connection. We are designed that way. It is how we're made. We see this even in the triune God, who is relationship, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It is in our very nature to be connected. And in fact, isolation and loneliness is one of the biggest killers of the soul. And so it is not good for man to be alone. We saw, even in the Genesis narrative, it was good, it was good, it was good, but the first not good was to be alone. And so our souls, our psyche, our deepest needs are rooted in connection. And it is so important that we find ways to build healthy connections, because it is also true that people, and I'm sure many people in the room, have experienced unsafe relationships, maybe quite traumatic connections with people, that not everyone is safe, and therefore we need to protect ourselves. And so that, I would say that people can get hurt in relationships, but people can get healed in relationships. And I want you to hold that as a key today. So connection matters. Do you know, research shows that chronic loneliness has the same health impact, which is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's what the research says. So imagine what it does to your body to smoke 15 cigarettes a day. That has the same physical health impact as loneliness. It can affect us physically, mentally, and spiritually. And there has been a link of premature mortality has been linked to this sense of loneliness. Obviously, there's mental health conditions that also are perpetuated by loneliness, such as depression, anxiety, even cardiovascular diseases and strokes. So there's a physical impact. There's also a psychological impact. Isolation causes stress hormones to spike, leading to chronic inflammation, reduced immunity, accelerated cognitive decline, dementia, etc. And I would say that we often view loneliness as being an older person's issue. Am I right in thinking that? Well, research has also shown us that loneliness is affecting Generation Z, so Gen Z as we call, like no other time in history. Young people are more lonely now than they have ever been in history. In fact, this is a recent research that's out. It said that 72% of Gen Z said that loneliness was having a negative impact on their mental health and well-being. And it's not that young people are not connected. They are, but the quality of connection is not the same as relationship. So people are connected via social media, via their apps, their Snapchats, their Instagrams, etc., etc. But quality of relationship is not there. And so it's left a lot of young people feeling more lonely and isolated than ever. I highlighted this. This is what a young person said about how they were feeling lonely. He said that cancel culture is a massive thing. People don't listen to each other. The smallest thing that someone does wrong is taken out of proportion. I've seen that reflected in a lot of my peers these days. And then she goes on to say that if you're reading a text and someone is a bit dismissive, it feels so much bigger in your head and becomes all-consuming. And it's so disabling for many young people. I think it's why our generation has been called more sensitive. But it's not that, it's just this constant anxiety. How will people react to me? How will I be accepted? Who is safe? So when young people are connecting via their mobile phones, they aren't getting the facial recall that you get in a face-to-face relationship. And so therefore, there's lots of time and opportunity to build a narrative up about how people think of me. And for our young people, their teenage years are formative. They are where they need to find their tribe. They push the boundaries of identity because they have to find a place to belong. It is part of their process. And it is important that we foster healthy connection and communication. And it starts way, way down here at the earlier ages. I don't know, are most of you working with primary school age children? Yeah. Is anybody working with teenagers? Yeah, great. Good to have a mix in the room because understanding the context for children and young people is so important. And children, yes, they are growing up increasingly more digitally connected. But as I said, often that relational connection is missing. And for our young children, a recent study has found that over 1/3 of children do not play outdoors anymore after school. 1/3. Think of your sphere, your children that you're leading. 1 out of 3 of those aren't playing outdoors. And 1 in 5 do not play outdoors at the weekends, even when they have the time. And NSPCC said that about 25% of children engage in face-to-face play daily. 25%. And this is where play is the child's language. This is where children learn how to negotiate. That's my toy. I want it. Oh, but I can see that I've hurt you by taking that off you. Okay, here you go. I feel an emotion about that. So therefore, I can share it with you. You don't get that when you're not playing together. And also neurologically, play develops the mirror neurons that's needed to be able to grow more cognitively aware, to build those neural connections that create better understanding of emotions, better understanding of problem solving, that actually children are much more able to regulate when those neural connections are built. And what we're seeing right now is a lot of dysregulated children not knowing how to soothe themselves and who is safe to help me soothe. Even just the, tactile reaction. So if a child's on their phone and they're playing, they're not getting the sensory experience that is needed to grow these neurological connections like they would if they're digging in sand or, building something with their hands. Their imagination can start to flourish through play. But if 25% of children are playing, 75% of children aren't. And so play is the child's language. How do we as helpers engage in play activities? And it'll be different. I know, again, a lot of us have different experience of play, and you might just ask yourself the question, reflect on, was I encouraged to play as a child? Because sometimes our experience stops us from playing with children because we actually don't know how to play either. But it's so important to develop strong, resilient mental health and also good relational connections. So I want to spend a little bit of the next time, or next wee while, we'll be rushing through this, talking about attachment. So attachment is the emotional bond that a child develops with a caregiver right from birth. Safe attachments foster safety, trust, identity, emotional regulation, and relationships. And so children learn through their attachments who they are, what others are like, and whether the world is safe. And that's the kind of fundamental questions that we ask to understand our attachment styles. So attachment is the emotional bond. And I love this quote by Daniel Stern. He says, "We are born into the world looking for someone looking for us." Love that quote. And in fact, when a baby is placed in their carer's arms, the start of attachment is the gaze on a child, whether they're aware of it or not. Even this length from the arm to the eyes, it fires those neurological signals that cement the fact that I'm safe. You can see, a child can see from this distance. They can feel held, supported, warmth, breath. It's quite a visceral experience, and it is the safest connection right from birth, this sense of being held this far away from your caregiver. It's what a child needs at that stage. But now we all know that there's no such thing as a perfect parent. There's no such thing as a perfect childhood. And so we learn these different attachment styles based on how our early formative years have developed. And so we have anxious attachment, fearful avoidant attachment, we have avoidant attachment, and we have secure attachment. That fearful avoidant is, we'll look into that as well. That is more like what we call disorganized attachment, and so I'll talk a wee bit about that too. But secure attachment is obviously optimal type of relationship that we want for children to develop and to grow in. And now I must also caveat this with, if we didn't get secure attachment in our early years, we still can in later years. And that's where therapy comes in really helpful. But it's also where secure relationships with someone that cares can send the message that not everyone is untrustworthy, unsafe, or unkind. And so your role in helping people develop secure relationships is vital. It is so important, and it is such a privilege. But we also need to understand our own attachment styles, because again, that informs how we relate to children. And so secure attachment is where the child feels warmth and care, where they develop trusting and forgiving relationships. There's a sense of good boundaries. I know what is safe in this relationship. I'm able to say my yes. I'm able to say my no. I'm not punished for who I am. That secure attachments also helps us manage emotions well, that we can be responsive and honest and open, again, without fear of feeling like we are bad. That's what secure attachment fosters, is this sense of I'm okay and you're okay, and people can be trusted. And then we move to anxious attachment. And this is where where kids have maybe developed a sense of my caregiver isn't always consistent. They aren't always there for me, maybe more emotionally distant. And therefore, relationships can be insecure. There's maybe a fear of abandonment, a lack of boundaries, maybe moods fluctuating up and down. Children can become highly sensitive or over-accommodating, a lot of people-pleasing to get reward, to get favour. Anxious attachments are, please don't leave me. I don't want to be left. And so therefore, all the behaviours that come out to try and keep a person close is what we start to see. So I don't know if you run residentials at all, you maybe notice those little kids that kind of hang on to their parent, please don't leave, please don't leave. And to be fair, most children will feel that. But if there's a strong anxious attachment style, what that child needs is to feel safe. And what that child needs is consistency and connection. And so an anxious attachment style might be fearful that people will leave and not come back, or I will send people away, or I am unlovable, and therefore I will do whatever it takes to make sure that you and I are okay. Does that make sense? Good. Any questions, by the way? Any thoughts? We'll get there. Then we have avoidant attachment. This is where someone learns that actually caregivers aren't going to meet my needs, and so therefore it's better that I become independent. So there's maybe a fear of closeness, because actually to be close, I'm not sure if that's appropriate, I'm not sure if that's okay, I'm not sure if that's how our relationship works. There's a sense of, am I going to be reprimanded or punished, or am I too needy? So therefore I learn to just shut my needs down as a child. And so these children with more avoidant attachments become more distant or withdrawn. They maybe avoid conflict. They're extremely independent. But perhaps emotionally distant and maybe more logical in their approach. They aren't going to give too much of their emotions away. It's maybe not modeled to them how to do that, or it's maybe unsafe to do that. And so they learn very quickly that you don't cry, you don't feel, you don't express. And we all grow up with our attachment styles, so what we learn in childhood, we can still present in adult life and in adult relationships. But yes, children tend to develop this avoidant attachment style for many reasons, but often it's because their caregivers weren't emotionally available or unresponsive to them when they needed them. And then we have what's called disorganized attachment. And this is really where a caregiver has been very confusing. This can be that my caregiver is, is good to me in one hand, but then can punish me in the other. And it's this inconsistency that actually leaves a fear of, is my caregiver safe or unsafe? I want to attach, but actually when I do attach, I am not safe. It's more where trauma perhaps has occurred in childhood, that it's all about survival. And a lot of children with this kind of attachment style, they just build strategies to survive. And so it can come out in lots of different ways. But one of the ways is it's perhaps children can't regulate the same. Their nervous system is so on high alert that they struggle to regulate. They find it difficult to trust and connect to other people. There's a tendency to disassociate, which means to shut down, switch off. It looks like there's nothing going on the inside, but that is actually a protective strategy. And they maybe lack empathy, but they want closeness, but maybe are fearful of others. And for children with this type of attachment style, it is about consistency. It's about showing up regardless. And you will see a lot of behaviours to try and protect, keep people away. But that consistent person can be a huge source of regulation that is needed at that time. And we'll talk about that in the next seminar. But maybe at this moment in time, it'd be good just to have a quick little buzz with each other, because I don't want you just listening to my voice all day. It'd be good to, oh yes, a wee question, yes. Absolutely, and so how we attach is actually part of the healing journey. And at the end, I'll talk about how actually when we have a God attachment, how that can actually be so healing, so powerfully healing in and of itself. But what conversely can happen is we project our fatherly experiences or our motherly experiences onto God. And so we still react in a way where God's going to punish me if I don't show up as the good girl. Or God's not pleased unless I burn myself out doing everything for the church, because that's what he wants of me. And so our attachment style can even influence our relationship with God. But what healing occurs, and again, it doesn't occur in isolation. We need the body. That's why we're made for connection. We need people to be able to see a model of what healthy, safe attachments look like. And therefore, and with my attachment to God, the restoration of what that relationship is and is always meant to be, that can be hugely profound shifting, and actually can help us connect to others so much better. But yeah, so it's not, attachments are not static. We give children the best when they have a secure attachment. The first 2 years are the most formative years in a child's life. But as I said, we all don't have perfect parents. Our secure attachments help us become more resilient, help us overcome relational difficulties. But it's not to say that we can't learn those things, but we need to do it in good attachment to others, to self, and to God. And so that's where the healing journey can occur. But have a quick little buzz with each other, some of the things you're hearing at the moment. But I want you to think about a significant relationship that you have had and that's had a positive impact on you growing up. It might be a parent, but it might be a teacher, a youth leader, someone you felt you had a secure attachment with. Just think, what was it about that person that made them helpful in your life? How did they make you feel safe? How did they make you feel seen? What was positive about that relationship? Just maybe the people beside you, a quick little buzz for a few minutes. And if you're not with someone, get with someone. Because we're built for connection. See all the smiles in your faces as you're thinking about your person. Just maybe a few people, just call out one important attribute, one thing that was important for you from this person. Just one word. Presence. Brilliant. Anything else? Sorry, say that again? Approachable, yeah. Trust. Love. Honesty. Patience. Listening, yeah.
Knowing somebody had your back, even if they were never able to express that.
Yeah, having your back.
They knew they were strong.
Yeah, that was really important. Want the best for you. Consistency. Yeah, a few people said that at the same time. Consistency. Selfless. Selfless. Wow. One more. Say that. Warm. Everything you have said are secure attachment qualities. Consistency, security, warmth, listening, have your back. Everything that was mentioned. Really important to think about. What was important for me? How do I offer that to others? These build within us safe, secure attachments that help us to build trust, connection, help us feel seen, safe, and soothed. And that is the optimal place that we can flourish, not just mentally, but actually spiritually. And you think about those attributes and how important they are even in God's character and how he leads us with his grace. But I would say it's hard to have spiritual maturity without emotional maturity. In fact, emotions invite us inward, and that helps us understand even what our spiritual needs. But if we just stay up here and we are fighting all the time to be safe, and we cannot connect to others, then we cannot connect to ourselves, then it's very hard to connect to God because we're in survival mode, and so therefore everyone's unsafe, even God. And so helping children to build safety through all the things that you have mentioned, it's like we can't then just tell children how to behave. They aren't going to hear that, but they will remember how they feel. They'll remember who they felt that with and how they feel about themselves because of that. So attachment isn't about perfect parenting, not at all. But it's about consistency and enough safety and repair. And we'll talk about the importance of repair at a later moment. And that clock is not being my friend right now, but I will get there. But I would just say children flourish because of one consistent adult. It just takes one. And one emotionally available leader. One trustworthy helper. One safe relationship. And so for some children, your consistency may be part of their healing story. It's not about fixing a problem. It's about showing up, being present, helping children feel safe, seen, and secure. Because it's in attachment that we develop our sense of identity. I want you to think about some challenging children that you've worked with over the years. What behaviours did you see? Because that's the thing, we see the behaviour. But there's usually some hidden emotional signals going on beneath the behaviour. So the role of a secure helper is to create conditions to foster safety, trust, and establish connection. Because children don't often hear the message, they hear the messenger. And if the message is delivered in a way that is threatening or unsafe, children adopt coping mechanisms to protect themselves from harm. So if they hear, you're going to punish me, then I am going to make sure I don't feel that effect. So you'll get my behavior all the more. Does that make sense? So people don't hear the message, they hear the messenger. And for children as well as adults, this is just so helpful for all of us. It is really important that we develop emotional literacy. So what I mean by that is helping children to develop a language that makes sense of their experience. Emotional literacy. So, for instance, emotions aren't hardwired. Okay, they aren't something we're just born with. They are developed. They are constructed. So you can have a child who's playing with a toy and it breaks, and all you see is this reaction of just, it looks like rage, it looks like, just they can't regulate, they're screaming, they're going into a tantrum, whatever. But if you say to the child, oh, it's really frustrating when that happens, then they have this word frustration. And it's like that allows the connection to occur at a neurological level. So now they have this word in their vocabulary, that's frustrating. So when I have the word, I'm much more able to make meaning of my experience. And it's the same as it's like painting with primary colours. You've got red, green, and yellow. Red, blue, and yellow, sorry. And if that was all the colours you had to paint with, you would have a very boring painting, wouldn't you? It's the same with our emotional language. If we just had sad, happy, scared, then that doesn't actually help us understand what's going on. It's like, imagine painting with 30 colours. Well, helping people to develop emotional literacy, like an emotional vocabulary, it actually helps all of us to relate a lot better and to make meaning of our experiences. So it's like painting with 30 colours. Because what we see is this iceberg, we see the behaviour. All the things we can see are above, but down below we can't see what the emotion is going on, what the experience is, what the meaning is being made of what's happening. So we can't see the overwhelm, the hunger even, or frightened, angry, curious. And so getting beneath the behaviour is the goal. It's like, I see your behaviour. Can we regulate enough to try and understand what's going on? And sometimes we do just need to calm the behaviour down before we can get into this kind of understanding place beneath the iceberg. But emotional granularity is what the theorist would call it. They say that the more emotional words we have, the more concepts we have, the better mental health we have, because we are meaning-making beings. We are storytellers. We are people that like to understand the context. And language is really important. And for instance, here in Ireland, we say tabrom orm, which means sadness is on me, not I am sad. See the difference that meaning has by just the words that we use? Sadness is on me, whereas I'm sad means something else. There's another word in Russia called toska, and it comes from this sense of looking out at a vast landscape of snow and hoping for a better future, hoping for something else. It's like a longing of the heart. Toska. We don't have a word like that in our language, but we understand the concept. Do you get what I mean? In Japan, they have this word amne, which is like an understanding that the children in the community will be cared for. We don't have that word here, but I understand what you mean now that I hear what meaning you're making. It's the same with our emotional words. It's like I can say I'm sad, but actually under it I am feeling alone or unsafe, or I'm not angry, I'm actually scared that you're going to leave. That helps us make much more sense. So extending even our vocabulary as helpers is really important. I have this thing, you can look it up, you can't see it on the screen, but it's called the Wheel of Emotions. And sometimes we do this with clients when we're helping in the counselling room. It's like, well, what word is standing out to you about how you're feeling right now? You can see all the range of words here, all these emotions. But you can see that, anger feels different than betrayed. And yet it's the same, probably, exertion of behaviour that we might see as, something we think is anger. But actually under the surface, it might be I feel betrayed or feeling jealous or overlooked, provoked, all of a sudden we have a different meaning, don't we? And so helping a child develop their emotional literacy is really important. And as adults, it's really important because when children hear a word, they can understand what that means. And then they start to build that in to their way of thinking. And I would say that this is so true. Dan Siegel, who again is a good, well-known psychologist, he says, if you can name it, you can tame it. If I can't name the emotion, I don't know how to tend to it. And so helping children develop emotional granularity is really important. And then it helps us to regulate. It helps us understand. It helps us become more compassionate helpers. I'm just going to play a little video that I want to show you because this is really about attunement. How do we tune in to what a child is communicating, whether through their behaviour or through their emotions? And I love this clip from Inside Out. Has anyone ever seen Inside Out? Yeah, it was all the emotions going on in Riley, this girl's brain, and they all have a different role. And so this is the part where Riley's imaginary friend, Riley's grown up now, and Riley's imaginary friend is not being used as much, and he's kind of reflecting on the old days, so he feels a bit sad. And Joy just wants to kind of make it better for him, but sadness is the one that actually tunes in to the emotions. So I'll show you, it'll all make sense when you see it. I think it's just it's a lovely way of conceptualizing what I'm saying here. It's sometimes we rush to fix an emotion because actually we're uncomfortable with the emotion, but all that creates is disconnection, whereas connection is always the goal. It's like when someone feels connected, they feel safe, and actually that helps tend to the emotion much better and actually much more quickly than just trying to fix it so that I feel better as a helper, that we're not seeing all your emotional spillage here. Now, there's obviously in your context, you need to think of how everybody else in the group can feel safe as well. And so be mindful of who are the safe people that can tend to attune to someone in your group who needs that little bit of extra time to connect, to feel safe, to feel secure. And can you show up as that person too? So becoming a safe adult, really this helps model to children that I'm here, I'm important, I'm seen. There's consistent support. Everything that we mentioned was important to us. We want other children to feel that too. So before children can fully trust what we teach, they often need to experience what safety feels like. And we don't have time to, go into this at the moment, but maybe if you want to take a wee picture, reflect on this for yourself. What kind of adult did you need as a child? What helped you to feel safe? What behaviours maybe trigger you the most when you're working with children? How activated do you get around certain emotions or behaviours? And be curious about that. Why is that? And how do you respond when children connect rejection, or when they reject connection? How does that feel? And what helps you to remain emotionally present as a helper? You see, a safe adult helps children to feel that they're calm, that they're not shamed, that they deserve attention, and that they're people who are of interest, and that they're accepted. And so what helps, or what makes an unsafe adult is maybe, minimizing that, a child's experience, or rejecting them, or that inconsistency, or maybe even sarcasm around how someone's feeling, that emotional unavailability. I want to encourage you to think about, how emotionally attuned can you be as a caring adult for a child. So belonging is the key. Again, I think we don't have time to get into this, but I want you to maybe have a little think, and you might have a discussion in the car on the way home with whoever you've travelled with about, do any of you do residentials? Yeah, a lot of people know. Hands up if you do a residential with children. Yeah, so What are some of the common challenges in residentials when children arrive in? What do you deal with? They don't eat. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
How long an answer do you want?
No, I don't need it. I don't have time for a long answer. But just a hunch.
Anything from not liking the food to they're uncomfortable.
They're uncomfortable. Yeah, they might not say, I don't like that, I don't like that. But really what might be going on is they're just feeling disorientated, dysregulated, and actually if I can control what I'm eating, then I can feel safer. What's beneath the behaviour? We want to understand some of the symptoms of what we're seeing. So we get a lot of homesickness when children come in residentials, and maybe emotional shutdown, maybe just acting up and hyper vigilant and actually creating a riot because that's something they can do. You might see conflict happen or boundary testing, maybe emotional regressions, so children going really back in their kind of age state. And so how do you foster environments that encourage connection? Think about how you welcome children onto residential, how children become aware of the surroundings that they're coming into, what knowledge do they get about that beforehand, remembering names, safe eye contact, inclusion, all of these things that help children feel connected. And I would say that this is key to fostering safe attachments. We often glance over how vital this is, but rupturing relationships, repairing where there is conflict, you see, one of the biggest misconceptions about secure attachment doesn't mean that there's no rupture, no conflict, no disagreement in relationships. That's not true. It just means that when there is a rupture, it's repaired. You know, that is incredibly freeing. It's knowing that you don't have to get it right all the time, but the simple act of apologizing if something's gone wrong. As an adult, people shy away from that. They just think the child needs to say sorry, and that's that. But do you know how powerful it is if you reflect, there's something I could have done better, to say to a child, I'm sorry that happened, and you know what, I feel like the next time this happens, I'm going to do that differently. Do you know how that models to a child your consistency, your emotional availability? And actually it models healthy relationships. When I can say sorry as an adult, that is powerful. And so I just want to make sure that we kind of just pay attention to that. Apologizing, reconnecting, repairing misunderstandings, building trust, they are all profoundly healing attachment helpers. So the last thing then I want to leave you, and I realize I've kind of run out of time here. So this is back to what we were talking about earlier, that having a secure attachment to God. I feel like for children, it's harder to have a secure attachment to God when the people around them, the adults in their life, aren't secure. And so if you want to show Jesus, you show up as a consistent, caring, supportive. It's someone who's not going to shy away from putting boundaries in place. Boundaries are really important, but in a way that fosters connection and not disconnection. And so I love this picture of just the roots going down deep in both these trees. Like they are connected and they sustain each other. There's something about their relational depth that fosters strength. For the tree to grow as an individual, they're actually connected at the roots. And so sometimes before children can fully hear truth, they must experience safety. And I just want to leave you with Romans 8. I love it in the Message translation. It says, I am absolutely convinced that nothing living or dead, angelic or demonic, today or tomorrow, high or low, thinkable or unthinkable, absolutely nothing can get between us and God's love because of the way that Jesus, our Master, has embraced us. Isn't that powerful? That's secure attachment. That's what unconditional love looks like.